Hi students, welcome to this session and we shall be talking about strategy to crack XAT verbal section 2016. Before moving further, let's have an overview of this session, what exactly we shall be taking up and how to go about. So in the overview of this session, we shall try to understand the pattern and the types of questions that come in XAT verbal section, and how to handle these different types of questions, what are the tricks involved, etc. Let us look at the exam pattern XAT verbal 2014. Paper had two parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was main and part 2 was based on general knowledge. Part 1 had three sections, A, B and C respectively, having 28, 24 and 31 questions respectively. This three-part section was followed by section 2 comprising GK only. The allotted time was 150 minutes. If we try to analyze the breakup of 2014, two things will come out very clearly, and these are, let us look at the breakup first. In 2014, there were 5 RCs, 3 questions each, therefore 15 questions. Verbal reasoning based questions 4, grammar 2, sentence arrangement 2 questions, and sentence completion 5 questions. So if you look at the overview of or breakup of this particular year, you will find that paper this year was dominated by reading comprehension questions and sentence completion questions. So we can make out one thing very clearly, that XAT in comparison to any other exam is altogether different. It is primarily based on understanding the context of the given questions and vocabulary, because sentence completion is based on vocabulary, reading comprehension is based on understanding. And sometimes in reading comprehensions also, the paper setter will give you very difficult words, difficult lines, and sometimes the subject itself will be very difficult for us to understand. So you need to focus on vocabulary and you need to read a lot, and that to diverse areas, so as to strengthen your reading skills, understanding skills and vocabulary skills. Now coming on to exam pattern 2015. This year verbal section had 28 questions and marks per question 1, -1/4. Again the paper had two parts, part 1 and part 2. In part 1 there were 3 sections, A, B and C, having 28, 23 and 33 questions respectively, so totaling up to 84 questions. And second part based on GK had 30 questions and 1 essay topic. Normally you will find essay on social or socio-economic, socio-cultural issues, but this year XAT gave an abstract topic related to the perception of beauty. We are supposed to line 25 to 30 odd lines. Total allotted time this year was 180 minutes. Overview of the verbal section. Primarily verbal section in 2015 was dominated by 2 sections, reading comprehension and critical reasoning based question. In reading comprehension also, you will find typically in XAT exam that even few questions in reading comprehension also would be based on critical reasoning, like inference and strengthening or weakening, in addition to conventional critical reasoning questions. Overall, the feel of the section was moderate to tough. That is a little different from other exams in one more area, that is, in this particular exam you will find decision making based questions. We shall be talking about this in some other video. Now if we look at the breakup of the verbal section, there were 3 reading comprehensions, 4 questions each, therefore 12 questions. Critical reasoning based question 9, vocabulary based questions 3, sentence completion based question 2, SR parajumble based questions 2. All the questions were moderate to tough. If you look at this breakup even, you will realize, you will see yourself that paper was dominated by reading comprehension critical reasoning questions, as we saw in the previous slide. So one moral, one lesson is very clear, that we need to work really hard to improve our RCs and critical reasoning, and simultaneously side by side we need to work upon our vocabulary also. This year 2016, XAT authorities have already announced the pattern of the exam. The number of questions has been reduced to 78. Again 3 sections in part 1 and part 2 comprising GK and essay topic. In part 1 there would be 78 questions, and part 2 25 questions in 35 minutes, and in part 1 78 questions in 170 minutes. So we have got ample time. So now we can make out the very important point number 2 is that since the number of questions is less and the time allotted is more, so we can make out this easily that paper is going to be difficult, and XAT is no doubt difficult in comparison to other exams. It's tougher than you talk about XAT, you talk about SNAP, etc. It is altogether different in terms of its DNA. Now this is breakup of part 1. Part 1 would be having 3 sections, 26, 23, 29 questions respectively. Probably 26 would be verbal, 23 decision making, and 29 quant DI. Now the very important part of this section, strategy to score well in XAT verbal 2016. So very important aspect of any competitive exam is generally it is always race against time. So this is no different. So you need to manage your time properly. Generally we should not devote more than 40 to 45 minutes or at the max 50 minutes to this particular section. The section is dominated by reading comprehension and critical reasoning based questions. So you should be very clear about the fundamentals or basics related to these two areas. You will find passages on philosophy, science, sociology, etc. So we need to include variety in our reading. You will find context a little difficult to understand, let it be sentence completion questions or critical reasoning or reading comprehension questions. So you should work really on your understanding. Since the paper is difficult, so we should only think of maintaining accuracy throughout. So out of let's say 26 verbal questions, one cannot go beyond 10 to 12 or at the max 14 questions, because it would be difficult after 14 or 15th question whatever you attempt, and therefore the focus should be on accuracy. We should have strong hold on the basics like areas like reading comprehension and critical reasoning. Need not to worry about grammar based question as the weightage of these questions would be less. In nutshell, if you have to score well in XAT verbal section and overall to get into its top quarter like XLRA, etc., you need to focus only on accuracy rather than increasing number of attempts. There is no point in increasing the number of attempts for sake of increasing the attempts. Focus on accuracy to score well. I have picked a few questions to make you aware about the difficulty level of these questions and how to handle these questions even. One peculiar feature of XAT is that it always introduces minor variations, be it in the number of questions, but this time it has already fixed 78 questions. But if I talk about the format of the question, distribution of the types of the questions, so every time you will find the pattern, the type, format, etc. change a little. So best way to overcome this hurdle, to overcome this unpredictability, is to solve previous year XAT papers. Now let us try to understand, solve questions from 2015 XAT verbal section. Now this is question number 1 based on sentence rearrangement, and the tricks would remain the same. We need to find the opening sentence, the closing sentence, the mandatory pair, etc. and we'll try to rearrange these jumbled up sentences. This is called partial parajumbling, where you will find sentence number 1 and 6 fixed. So 1 says the world of cinema is indeed a strange one and baffles, means confuses many a critic. So we need to pick up the sentence which will gel with or go along with sentence number 1. If you read all the sentences, you will find that one which is gelling well with this emotion related to confusion is sentence R. Baffles can be related to made and unmade. The fortunes are made and unmade. Therefore, critics are really confused regarding the world of cinema. You need to pick up mandatory pair, mandatory trio using different techniques like chrono pairing, contrast, keyword link, noun pronoun, etc. So I'll show you the next slide where you'll find 3 more sentences. So after 1 it is clear that R will come. Now we have got 2 options, option number 3 and option number 2. We need to finalize, pick up the best between these two. So 1R is fine. Now after R, S will come or Q will come. This we have to decide. We need to go back to the question, Q sentence. So going along with the emotion or the tone in the first sentence, in the second after first R, the negative tone sentence is Q. The pundits still predict doom and they insist that it is end of the road for cinema. Now P is contrasting with Q. So QP will form a mandatory pair, QPS. Now let's go back to the choices. So QPS, these three sentences are forming a mandatory trio. Therefore, answer option is 3. In this question number 2, it's based on vocabulary. We need to pick up the sentence which is not going well or gelling well with the given word disapproval. Disapproval is negative, so we need to pick up the sentence. We need to pick up a word which is positive. Infantile, childish behavior. Immature, negative, rejected. Charlatan is again con, deception, negative, rejected. Imbecile, stupid, negative, rejected. Awful is again stupidity, rejected. The only positive word is childlike, so answer is childlike. Now question number 3 is based on para completion, what we call critical reasoning advance, where the last line, we cannot say the last line is related. We need to pick up the choice which will complete, which will follow this paragraph. Now which will follow implies 2 questions, whether it is para completion or simply we have to derive a conclusion. So logically follow generally means conclusion. So we need to read the given question very carefully, and conclusion, the best conclusion is which covers the entire or the main points. So it goes like this. It is a curious historical fact that modern quantum mechanics began with 2 quite different mathematical formulations. Now I'll be underlining few important keywords. So 2 different mathematical formulations. One was the differential equation of Schrodinger, and the second was matrix algebra of Heisenberg. These 2 were apparently dissimilar. The another keyword would be dissimilar. Approaches were proved to be mathematical equivalent. The last keyword is mathematical equivalent. Now we need to pick up the choice which would combine the essence of all these 3 or 4 keywords. Now let's go to the choices. First choice says that 2 approaches did not start with the same mathematical formulation. Now seems to be very tempting choice, but it is half correct, not the complete one. A third mathematical formulation given by Feynman combines the matrix of algebra of Heisenberg and integral calculus of Leibniz. So we are not sure, we cannot conclude this. So third rejected. Quantum mechanics evolved in the 20th century and came very close to particle physics, especially after the CERN experiment. So it happened recently, so we cannot make this also out from the given context. So rejected. Earlier 2 formulations were mathematically similar. Now this is factually wrong. They were quite dissimilar. So we are left with only option number 2 is the answer. It says these 2 points of view were destined to complement each other and were ultimately synthesized in direct transformation theory. They were used to create, or they were used, both were used, theories were used to formulate one formula. So this is now would logically follow, we can make out, we can draw this conclusion out of the given facts. Now question number 4, based on critical reasoning conventional. Ranu is an ordinary sports person. In last 2 university sprint events, her performance in the heats trials were pathetic, means dismal, sad. Which of the following, if true, will weaken the argument? This we have been asked. So we know that strengthening and weakening is done on the basis of an assumption made by the author related to the question. So we need to first of all find out the conclusion which we are supposed to weaken. The conclusion is that she is an ordinary sports person, and this one is a fact. The assumption made by the author here is that recent performances will decide the value or will tell the quality of an athlete or a sports person. We need to pick up the choice where we can hit that recent performances will not decide whether the athlete or the sports person is fine or not. Let's scan the choices now. First, she had participated in college swimming competition and finished last. So this is again, we are again criticizing, insulting this sports person. Therefore rejected. The last 2 times Ranu had to compete with national level runners. Had she been in other heats trials, she would have reached the quarterfinals. We are just talking about the quarterfinals. So not a big achievement. Therefore rejected. Ranu was the only player who represented her college in just representation would not ensure the sports person or the athlete is fine or not, therefore rejected. In the college sprint events, Ranu always won. We don't know which position she got, first, second, third, or probably first 5, first 10, etc. Seems to be very close, but if you have got better choice than this, which will hit the assumption that recent performances should not be counted to evaluate any athlete, will be our answer option. And this is option number 2. It says second, she is a national shot put champion. Champion means something and it means a lot. Therefore, an answer option. Question number 5 is based on vocabulary. We need to pick up group 3 words which are similar in meanings, and take your time to go through all these words. And calamitous, negative, pertaining to calamity, likely to cause destruction. Catastrophic is again pertaining to destruction. Cataclysmic is also the same. Therefore, the answer would be 4th choice. Now here the question is based on fill in the blanks. We need to pick up the choices, and you will find this question to be peculiar in terms of the framing of the choices. You will find choices to be kind of rhyming. Eminent, imminent, eminent, immanent, etc. So first of all, let's go through the sentences. He is the most dash of the speaker to address us today. He is the most, we can say, well respected, famous. Second sentence, the belief in the dash justice is essence of his talk. Now essence would be that his talk always includes the justice, essence of the justice, so kind of embedded. Third, this hall would have been full but for the dash rain. Because of the rain, people did not turn up, so a little bit of guess from our side. Fourth, many of the audience have achieved dash in their respective field. So what we are doing right now, we are trying to anticipate or guess or speculate what will come in these blanks. So they have achieved what? Expertise. Now pick up the choice which is going along with these speculated words. Let's go to the choices. So if you go by the choices, eminent, the first blank, eminent person, address the gathering. Immanent is inherent, embedded. Imminent is inevitable, about to come, sure to happen. And last would be achieved eminence in their respective fields. So answer option 3rd. Now the question number 7 you see on your screen is actually based on one of the RCs in this paper, 2015 CAT, XAT verbal section. But my idea of picking this question was to tell you that even sometimes we also can solve the question without reading the RC, given RC. So we need to pick up the words and try to match them with their respective meanings. For example, I know dungeon will go with cell, guillotine will go with execution. Now pick up the choice where second is going with D and third is going with C. Second is going with D and third is going with C. So we have got two options, two close options, first and third. We just need to check 1B or 1A. And if you read, if your vocabulary is above average and you read the passage, you will find the line clearly mentioned that 1 is going with B. Now this question number 8 actually is based on critical reasoning. We need to understand the context of the given RC. This particular question is a little difficult to understand. That's why I picked up this question. You will find 6 to 7 questions based on this particular essence or the type. You need to read this question very carefully to get the context. Until unless we understand the context, there is no point that we can solve this question. So take your time. It is about private goods versus public goods, and it is about how come private goods provider give importance to the information related to customer taste preferences, but when it comes to public goods, public services, the importance of information is lost. But in case if any information is there, we need to make it public. Let it be by voting, etc. So read, take your time. I shall be moving on to the next slide. If you have to again read this particular part, take pause and come back. The next part of this question, take your time. And this is the last part of this question, this passage given. So he has given one note also. He has defined for us what exactly we mean by public goods and what exactly we mean by private goods. So let us look at the question what we have been asked. Now statement 1 says in India, factories dump their waste in nearby water bodies. Now this is kind of information which should be made public and strict action should be taken against these factories. My anticipation after reading this statement. Second statement says, government is thinking of granting tax benefits to the factories which adopt eco-friendly practices or technologies. Second is that government is trying its level best to reduce the problem stated in statement number 1. So pick up the choice which would highlight these two sentiments and their implications. So statement 1 is an example of a market failure where market fails to tackle this problem of harming the environment, and second statement is government is trying its level best to solve the problem. So going along with these two sentiments, these two sentiments being reflected, this particular relationship between statement 1 and 2 being reflected in option number 3. Therefore 3 is an answer option. So now these were only a few questions out of 28 questions, just to make you realize or make you aware regarding the level of the difficulty and the types of questions and how to handle these questions. So what we have understood after looking at these 8 questions, that we need to work really hard as far as critical reasoning is concerned, reading comprehension is concerned, and we need to work upon our vocabulary also if you want to crack XAT verbal. Last slide you will find answer to all those 8 questions. Know more about XAT and other related exams and other areas, even in let it be any subject, DI, verbal, quant. We have got videos uploaded on our site, so you can log on to our YouTube channel hitbullseye.com to know more about other exams as well as XAT even. All the best.